Hello retro gamers, in this video I will give you a tour of my retro gaming room. Now the last time this was seen was in the video I made about moving it over here from the previous place where I lived, but that was a pretty long and convoluted and crappily made video, so I thought I'd do something a little bit more formal, and a few things have changed since then. Anyway, so come in here. Come on. So if we pan around, we'll see there's a couple of different components. So we've got obviously the TVs, the consoles, the crap pile, some games there, as well as another shelf of games there as well. And I'll just take you through these one by one. So start off with the TVs. Now those who watched the last video may notice that there is a different TV here. This was the original TV that I had. Originally I had in between TV, in between the two times I've used this, I had a Sony Trinitron, 32 inches, it was really heavy, it was awesome when it worked, but unfortunately it did die, and my expertise just aren't high enough to fix a big, dangerous television like that, so unfortunately we had to put that on the verge for pickup, and it put out my dad's back. So that wasn't good, so sorry Dad. So we're back to this, it's only composite only, which is why I have that other TV. Now, this TV is a very recent purchase. I bought this from a department store in Australia called Big W. It has a component input, which is what I was after, and it's a 32 inch. And I think it cost $170 just on sale. But I made this shelf for it using the leftovers from the arcade stick from a couple of videos back. So a lot of people in there were wondering, they were surprised that I spent so much money on buying all the tools and equipment, but I've already reused them all again for this one project, so it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it was good to be able to make it to size. So it's the same height as this TV, but obviously it's not too long, so it doesn't impede access to the cupboard. So for that, I've currently got my Xbox, original Xbox, and a PS2 plugged into it, into component, and these plug in via a component switch box. I also have a Raspberry Pi here as well that plugs in via HDMI. It's good that I can now do this in this room. Originally I'd have to go into the lounge room and use that TV, but I figured if I'm making games about retro games, if I'm making videos about retro games, I might as well do it all in the same room and utilize this room which I've dedicated to the cause. So I only bought that 2-3 weeks ago. Back to this TV, it is composite only unfortunately, but that's good for most things really. If we come down here, this is my switching system. So basically the TV only has two sets of composite ports, AV1 and AV2, and these boxes here are just daisy chained into those, so I can just choose anything that I want to play at will. There's no cable swapping or anything. Over here is a selector. See, it says Elgato. That's for obviously recording the footage, which I guess brings us onto that. That's this guy here, covered in cat hair. So I currently use an Elgato Game Capture HD. This is very old. I think it was released in 2011 or somewhere around there. As you can see, the cable's seen better days. Unfortunately, it is discontinued, so if that dies on me, I'm either going to have to find something new to use or a second-hand one. The reason I like using this so much is because it can natively accept composite and component as inputs, while newer versions are HDMI only. So if I was going to go that route, I would have to look into conversion boxes and all that sort of crap. So for now, I'm just keeping the status quo, and I hope that it just keeps working. That all just feeds in through this laptop here, this little table, which I found on the side of the road one day. Another good feature about the Elgato is that it has like a rewind function. So say if I'm trying to beat a boss fight and it takes me 20 times and I keep dying, obviously I don't want to record all of that. What I can do is I can just have it running on the computer, and when I finally do beat it, I can rewind it to the start of the boss fight and just record that segment. So that's definitely another thing keeping me with Elgato. It's just a shame that their newer hardware doesn't accept composite and component. So, moving on. Everything is ready to be played at a moment's notice. Everything is plugged into the power. Luckily this room has 2 power points, so the wiring is obviously a big mess. It's definitely one thing I want to make better about this, but you know, It's just a lot of work and I don't feel like doing it. But everything's all plugged in, everything's just ready to go. I'll take you through my consoles and handhelds now. Most of my handhelds are along the top here, so we've got the Game Gear, that is recapped as well before you ask. Got a couple of DS's, a couple of Game Boys. 3 of these you would have seen from videos where I repaired them. It's a DMG, the Game Boy Pocket, and the Game Boy Advance, but obviously the Game Boy Pocket is still not in the best of condition there, so I'm hoping to either try and fix that in a different video or buy a new one secondhand. The Game Boy Color is from my childhood, and the SP, I can't remember when I bought that. Otherwise, we've got the PSP, we've got the Caveman, which you may recognize from a video, maybe a year ago. And then we have my only retro computer from the 80s. It's an Atari 520 ST. I bought that on Gumtree for 10 bucks. And that does work, by the way, even though does look pretty rough. It's been sitting in some garage for God knows how long. Otherwise, we've got all consoles. There's nothing really too special out of the ordinary here. I'll just show you my lighting system real quick. So everything's lit by LED strips. So we've just got the old favourites, got the N64, PS1, PS2, and you will not believe how hard it is to find one of these versions of the PS2s that actually work. Usually the drives are screwed up in some way. Dreamcast. There's another Xbox there. I actually think that one's not working at the moment. I haven't used it in a while. I've been using the other one because it's modded, so I can play American games. Got my GameCube, which is also modded. There's several videos of me modding that. And then bring it up here, we've got my Japanese PS1, Super Famicom, which is obviously the Japanese SNES. And then we have a SNES, Mega Drive, NES, and Super Master System 2. What is going on out there? Anyway, never mind that. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. So yeah, this Master System is also from, there's also a video of me modding that as well, giving its composite out, since that is not a feature of the Master System 2, only the Master System 1. But it's very easy. Find the video if you want to do it. Doesn't require very many components at all. Okay, so moving on. This is my disgrace pile here in the corner. Some things in here I have made videos of. You may recognize the Star Cam and the Music Star. A few other things in there waiting to have videos made about them. Probably the next thing I will out of this pile is this Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom in this case, pirating device. I've had this for a very long time. The whole interface is in Japanese, but now that Google Translate works quite well, I might actually be able to use it, because I know it boots up, but I've got no idea if the floppy drive works. Anyway, beanbag, that's a pretty important part of the game room. Obviously it is a small room, it's a small space, so having a couch in here wouldn't make much sense, let alone even a single chair recliner. So the beanbag works well. I can easily just position it where I need, because this table moves around depending on what TV I'm using. If I'm using this TV, usually this goes over here. So anyway, the games. So on this shelf, first you'll notice I've just got some boxes at the top there. And then I have my PlayStation 2 collection. You'll notice I've just got little oddities and things from previous videos just scattered around just as shelf dressing. So the PS2 is definitely one of my bigger collections. Moving down, we have my Xbox collection, which has increased quite a bit in the last couple of years, but it's still nowhere compared to the PS2 collection. But I've owned a PS2 for much longer. We've also got the GameCube collection there, just crammed there in the corner. There's my modded Game Gear from a video ways back. And yes, that is recapped as well, before you ask. Oops. And then we've got my big box PC collection. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a computer in this room. It's in the other room, which I'll take you to shortly. It's also where I work, so I'll show you my workbench, my computer, and all that sort of area. But I love big box PC games. I love collecting them. They're always very cheap too. Usually find them in the board game sections of op shops. So we've got a few more down there. And then we have the smaller cardboard box games, probably from the mid-2000s, that sort of era. And then below here we just have all the hard case games. And there's a lot of newer games in there as well. But of course, anything that I've played in recent years is just download only. So, moving on to the second game shelf. We have a few more boxes up there. And then we have my PS1 collection, which is easily my largest collection. It is my personal favorite console for nostalgic reasons and practical reasons, since it is awesome. You'll notice there is a mix of Japanese games in there as well, like Vib-Ribbon. Then along there we've got my Game Gear games. The start of my Game Gear games anyway. They're a taller cameraman. Camera woman in this case. And then we have a few more Game Gear games here as well. And of course there's a few Japanese ones thrown in there because the Game Gear is region unlocked. Over here we have my SNES and Super Famicom loose cartridges. I've only got a few games boxed. That one's for the Super Nintendo, that one's for the Super Famicom. Then we have my Mega Drive. So if I'm going through this really quick, I just don't want the video to be super duper long. Got my boxed Mega Drive games there, my paltry collection of SNES games. And then we have the start of my Game Gear collection here as well. And then moving it down to the next shelf, we've got the rest of my Game Boy games. Thank you. We have a couple of boxed Game Boy Color games. Excuse me. These four here are from my childhood. That one I bought quite recently actually. It's very rare to find boxed Game Boy Color games. There's my total of 2 Game Boy Advance games. Definitely one of my smallest collections. Nintendo DS. And then we've got the start of my Dreamcast collection, and there's also quite a few Japanese, or not quite a few, but there's a nice handful of Japanese games in there as well. Got my 2 Atari ST games, just to prove that the system does work, but obviously you don't find Atari ST games very commonly out in the wild. If you want them, you've got to go online and buy them. And they're not really that cheap, considering they're just floppy disks. Anyway, down here we have the rest of my Game Boy Color collection, just the loose cartridges. And then we have my PSP collection, which is pretty massive considering I've only had a PSP for about a year. These games are so cheap right now. I don't think I've paid more than $5 for any of these. A lot of them are like $1 or $2. Well, that does say $8 there, so maybe I did pay more than $5. But, oh, $10. Oof. You know, I probably got that from cash converters where they always have things on sale, so probably didn't pay that much. Anyway, we've got my N64 games here, which are pretty hard to show because I don't have labels on the side. Then we have my Atari 2600 games, and I've got a couple of box games recently. And these were quite cheap as well. I can't remember exactly how much I paid, but very rare to find those, so I definitely snatched those up. Then we've got the loose cartridges. One of these days I will do more Atari 2600 reviews. I just need some way to capture the video output. Before I was using a VCR, and I don't have a VCR with me here, so that's something I'll figure out in due course. On the very bottom shelf we have some Leapster games. Do not ask me why I have those. We've got some Master System games. These are very common in box, I've noticed. You find them everywhere and they're usually the same price. But I do have some loose cartridges there as well. Below there we just have some PC games in plastic cases. Then we've got some Famicom games over here, which are always very nice and colourful. Obviously they're all Japanese. And then we just have some floppy disks there at the end. Let me just do some moving around. Definitely would like a bigger room, but I've never had a dedicated room to retro gaming before, so the fact that there is a room at all is nice. I can't really complain too much. In the cupboard here, basically just got where I store all my controllers and cables. So basically I just store them in Ziploc bags, so one bag for each console, and this way they don't get tangled up with everything, they only get tangled among themselves. And then there's just a shoebox of power supplies, and then just a dumpster fire of cables in there. Alright, on to room number 2. So this is where all the fun happens. All the work happens in the other room. Okay, so this is the second room where I probably spend most of the time, to be honest, compared to the other room, unfortunately. It's basically split between 2 sections. We've got my computer desk here, and then we have my workbench over here. I guess we'll start with that. And of course I've just got the one chair, I can just swivel between the 2. So any sort of repairs or mods or anything like that I've done in recent videos has been right here. At the moment, the current project is a Neo Geo Pocket Color. It's got sound problems, so stay tuned for a future video on that. Otherwise, I just have everything here that I need. I've got like a little monitor that takes composite. I've got part bins. I've got, you know, canned air, isopropyl alcohol, soldering iron. I'm not going to go for every single thing. Got a little clamp here, which I've never used. And then I've got some lighting. And then I also have this lamp. That's just more useful when I'm recording videos more than the actual usefulness of when you're working. Got digital radio down there, and then I've got just all the rest of my tools and whatnot here. Nothing too out of the ordinary, just pliers and screwdrivers, so many screwdrivers. Then we just got my printer. Over here we have my retro gaming computers. So this Acer Aspire is turned up in quite a few videos since I got that working 5 or so years ago. There's my Windows 98 computer, which and for DOS as well, which you may remember from a video, well, a good 3 years ago now. That's the one I found on the side of the road during a Verge collection. I got it working in the video, but I have had since problems with it, and I sort of just disregarded it for a long time. And a couple of months ago, I got back into it and tried to get it working, swapping out lots of parts, trying to figure out what the issue is. Turns out it's the motherboard, and motherboards are by far the most expensive thing to buy on the internet in this day and age. I don't know why. Like, I could buy a processor for $8, buy 6 of RAM for a couple of dollars each, but the motherboards are like over $150. So it's sort of a cost reason that's stopping me from getting that to work, but it's definitely on the cards. Otherwise, we have my main computer here. It's a good gaming computer, even though I definitely don't do enough gaming on it, but it's beefy enough for 4K video, and I've got a 4K screen here. And then just my secondary screen, which was my original screen. That's just a full HD screen. Keyboard, Cherry Blues. Do a lot of typing. It's RGB. Obviously it's not turned on right now. This mouse is definitely the oldest thing here. So old that you can't even see the logo anymore. I plan on buying a Logitech MX Master 3 or MX3 Master or whatever it's called. But I just can't buy them at the moment. They're just not out. But as soon as they're available on retail, you get the nice little cool scrolly wheel on the side. You may notice there's 3 computers and only, well, 2 monitors, but 1 set of keyboard and mouse. If you look below here, I've got these switch boxes. So obviously the monitors can take multiple video inputs, but those switch boxes are for the keyboard and the mouse, and you'd be surprised just how well they work. Even with the Windows 98 computer, there was no configuring or anything. A 2018 keyboard just plugs in and just works. So, and even the RGB lighting and everything still works. So, definitely cool. Otherwise, not really much else to show. Over here, we've just got some storage. So in this top bin, we've got all broken consoles and spare parts. Oh, that's just the computer that preceded this one. Got my consumable bins there, so that's just full of, you know, batteries and bits of, you know, I don't know, what is in here? Glues and gloves and sandpaper, just crap like that. Got my big old thing of cables in there. Just got some crap there. Some more crap, and then we've just got a couple of spare parts bins, and then this is full of more tools. So, got my off-brand Dremel, you know, got soldering iron, digital calipers, just stuff like that. And then lastly, we just have an area where I just store my camera equipment. So the camera that's filming right now usually goes in that bag. Just got my old camera there, microphone, and while we're talking about microphones, that's the one I use for the camera. And then I have the old faithful Blue Yeti, whatever it's called. That's what I use for all the voiceovers. Yeah, that concludes the tour.